In 2021, European food safety regulators found something in a common food additive that made them stop it completely. The rest of the world looked at the exact same evidence and did nothing. Today we find out what they saw. Welcome to Ingredient Verdict, where we examine one ingredient at a time, no hype, just the evidence. Titanium dioxide, listed as E171 in Europe, is a whitening agent used in thousands of everyday products. And later in this video, we'll get to the one detail about particle size that explains almost the entire controversy. Quick note before we start. This video is for informational purposes only and does not constitute medical advice. Always consult your healthcare provider before making significant changes to your diet. Let's start with what it actually is. Titanium dioxide is a naturally occurring mineral, mined and processed into a fine white powder. It's chemically inert in its bulk form, which is part of why it was considered safe for so long. It's used to whiten and brighten foods, chewing gum, candy, donut icing, coffee creamers, salad dressings, as well as toothpaste, sunscreen, and paint. It has no flavor and no nutritional value. Its only function is appearance. Here's where it gets more complicated. And when we get to the nanoparticle question, that's exactly where regulators start disagreeing with each other. This is the moment everything changed. A meaningful proportion of the titanium dioxide used in food products doesn't behave like the mineral it's made from. It exists as nanoparticles, particles smaller than 100 nanometers, roughly 1,000 times thinner than a human hair. And at that scale, the old assumption of safety stopped holding up. Nanoparticles move through the body differently than larger particles of the same substance. This single detail is the reason the entire regulatory world split in two. Titanium dioxide isn't actually unique here. It's just the one that got tested first. Nanoparticles are notoriously difficult to regulate, precisely because traditional food safety testing wasn't built for them. Standard toxicology assumes a substance behaves the same way regardless of particle size. Nanoscale ingredients break that assumption. The same chemical can act completely differently depending on how small its particles are. Which raises an uncomfortable question this case may only be the first version of. How many other approved food additives contain an undisclosed fraction of nanoparticles that were never tested at that scale? So why did the EU actually ban it? In 2021, European food safety regulators concluded that titanium dioxide could no longer be considered safe as a food additive. The core issue wasn't toxicity in the traditional sense, it was genotoxicity, meaning the potential to damage DNA. Regulators specifically flagged that they could not rule out genotoxic effects. Once a substance can't be confirmed safe on that front, the standard threshold for approval isn't met. The ban became fully enforced across the EU in 2022. This is an important distinction. The EU didn't conclude that titanium dioxide definitely causes harm. It concluded that safety couldn't be adequately demonstrated, a precautionary standard, stricter than what's used in some other regions. Now for what the research actually shows. Animal studies have investigated titanium dioxide nanoparticle exposure and found signals worth taking seriously. Several rodent studies have found evidence of nanoparticles crossing the intestinal barrier and accumulating in tissue, including the liver and spleen. Other animal research has linked chronic exposure to changes in gut microbiome composition and low-grade intestinal inflammation. We want to be clear. These are animal studies, and translating findings from rodents to humans is never guaranteed. Human data is far more limited. There's no large-scale, long-term human clinical trial establishing harm at typical dietary exposure levels. Most human-relevant evidence comes from in vitro studies, cells in a lab, not people, showing titanium dioxide nanoparticles can be taken up by human intestinal cells and, in some experiments, trigger inflammatory markers. In vitro findings are a starting point for concern, not proof of real-world harm. This is genuinely a case where the evidence is incomplete rather than damning. And that's exactly the gap that's about to become the whole story, because the rest of the world looked at that same incomplete evidence and reached a different conclusion. What about the United States and other countries? The EU didn't actually ban it overnight. France moved first, banning titanium dioxide nationally in 2020, a full 2 years before the rest of the EU followed. For those 2 years, the same product was legal in Berlin and illegal in Paris. That's how unresolved this question already was, even within Europe itself. In the US, the pressure is building from a different direction. Consumer advocacy groups have petitioned the FDA for reassessment, citing the same nanoparticle research the EU used. The FDA hasn't ruled either way. The petition remains under review, with no public timeline for a decision. Titanium dioxide remains an approved food additive, generally recognized as safe. Canada and most of Asia and South America also continue to permit it. So right now, 3 different positions exist simultaneously: full ban, active reconsideration, and no restriction at all, for the exact same compound, based on the exact same body of research. That gap tells you less about the danger of the compound itself and more about how differently regulatory bodies weigh uncertainty. Now, a practical note on exposure. And here's something most people never think to check. Titanium dioxide doesn't just hide in candy and gum. It's in the white coating on your vitamin tablets. It's in some toothpaste. It's even used to make certain medications easier to swallow. Which means someone actively avoiding it in food might still be consuming it multiple times a day, without ever reading a food label at all. The most concentrated dietary sources remain candy, chewing gum, and white-iced baked goods. But if you're trying to minimize exposure seriously, supplement capsules and coated tablets are worth checking too. Look for titanium dioxide, or E171, in the inactive ingredients list, not just the food label. Reading labels helps. In the EU, it's now absent from food entirely. Elsewhere, look for E171 or titanium dioxide on ingredient lists, most common in bright white candies, gum, and powdered coffee creamers. So here's our verdict. The evidence for concern is real, but incomplete. Regulators aren't claiming titanium dioxide definitely causes harm in humans at typical exposure. They're saying the safety case has gaps, particularly around nanoparticle behavior and genotoxicity, that haven't been closed. And here's the part that should genuinely unsettle you. This isn't a case that's been resolved and forgotten. The EU chose precaution. The rest of the world chose to wait. Both can't be right forever. At some point, new evidence will force one side to change its position. We just don't know which one yet, or when. For anyone wanting to reduce exposure without waiting for that moment, cut back on ultra-processed candy, gum, and heavily dyed baked goods, and check labels, including on supplements and medications, if you're in a country where it's still permitted. That's our verdict on titanium dioxide. Bottom line, when regulators can't agree, the story isn't over. It's just paused. Read the label, not the marketing. If this was useful, subscribe. In every video, we examine one ingredient. No hype, just the evidence. What ingredient would you like us to examine next? Drop it in the comments below. See you next time.